It's a new week, and that means new drama here around the Pittsburgh sports scene. This is another episode of Mic'd Up here, presented by Martin Lawn Services and on Pittsburgh Sports Live, Pittsburgh Sports Now, and all throughout the Now family of networks. I'm your host, Mike Asti, and I am joined by my Mike counterpart, Mike Vukovcan, and we are going to discuss Ben Roethlisberger's future and what it would take to have to bench Ben Roethlisberger since he's not looked good to this point. Or maybe is the offensive line to blame? Maybe is play calling to blame? We'll get in all of that. We'll also get into a Pittsburgh kid, a Pittsburgh hometown boy who had some choice words about the Steelers. He now plays for a rival, plays for the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm talking about Tyler Boyd saying the Steelers quit. So losing some luster in terms of its Pittsburgh love potentially these days, or maybe the Steelers did. And then we're also going to touch on the state of Pitt and West Virginia football. Pitt, a record-setting performance, but it was against a lower-level opponent. They now will have some conference play and some more of a test to really prove themselves. And West Virginia losing a close game to the number 4 team in the country after a victory over the then number 15th ranked team in the country. Is West Virginia better than some would think, or was it fool's gold to be that close with Oklahoma? Does that maybe say more about the Sooners than WVU? So to get us underway here, we will start off with the Steelers, and this has just been the talk of the day, of the week, potentially going to be the talk of the month, and honestly, or even overshadowed what Tyler Boyd said, because everyone's been fixated on Ben Roethlisberger. So, Mike, to get it started, Ben hasn't looked good. Yes, the offensive line has not made it easy on him, but he is misfiring receivers, either over or underthrowing them. The yards are there, but 2 interceptions against Cincinnati. He's being sacked tons, which is making it harder. And it would be harder on any quarterback, Brady, Manning, whoever, if you don't have an O-line. But Ben is looking much more like the end of the season Ben than the beginning of the season Ben last year. Potentially, it could only get worse. And the Steelers still have hopes this year, even though right now, sitting below 500. Haskins and Mason Rudolph are behind him. Rudolph QB2, Haskins QB3. I don't know if anyone loves either one in all reality, but what would it take for you to bench Ben Roethlisberger and not have him be your quarterback if he's healthy? Tomlin's going to stick with him for a while. Obviously, he's going to start against the Packers, but if he gets worse, would that just trigger, let's try Mason for a while, use the experiment, and then go to Haskins, etc.? Or what would it take for you to be done with Ben right now?
That's a tough question. I tell you that's a tough question for Mike Tomlin too. In that I saw somebody, I believe, Aditi from the NFL Network.
Yeah, Aditi Kinkabala. Yep.
Yeah, I believe she said that no matter what, Ben is still no matter what, all healthy, Ben is still the best option of the 3 quarters. If that's the case,
and that could be an argument. I mean, that's not crazy to say.
If that's the case, then I just don't know why you have a backup,
right?
If you're never going to go to him. If he's not that good enough, if he's not good enough to get into a game, then he's probably not good. He shouldn't be on the roster.
Well, do you think that's the reason why they're riding with Ben?
No, and that's why I started off by saying I think it's a tough decision because no matter what you're talking. If this was any other quarterback, if this was Tommy Maddox or whoever you're talking about, and I know it shouldn't play into it, but it's reality. Yeah. Ben Roethlisberger is a Hall of Fame quarterback. He led this team to Super Bowls.
Right, the only one Tomlin's ever had with the Steelers. Yes. They're tied together.
In all reality, this is his last year in Pittsburgh.
Right.
Is that the way you want him to go out? And I know that shouldn't enter into Mike Tomlin's decision. He should be worried about 2021.
Right.
He sees practice. I don't get it. Here's what I don't get, Mike. Explain this to me.
I'll
For
try.
3 quarters, and I had guys, we were watching the game, and they said, and I said, I don't have the answer. I don't know. For 3 quarters, he throws the offense's side passes for 2 yards. And then when they're down 3 points or they're down 2 scores or whatever in the last quarter, he starts firing down the field and connecting. Why is it?
Yeah.
Why is that not?
Yeah.
Why is that not happening, or at least being attempted in the first 2 quarters? I don't get it. By all you're doing here is getting your receivers beat up, Chase Claypool and especially Najee Harris are getting the hell beat out of him.
Oh, Najee Harris, sure. He's getting more. I mean, he had the record-setting day target-wise as a receiver, and he's not getting that many carries as a running back, but he is going to get beat up.
On these catches.
He's getting killed, right?
Because everything is within the line of scrimmage. As soon as he catches it,
there's no room.
There's somebody up his butt.
Right.
It's just, I don't get it. If Ben is not physically capable, if that is the reason why they're doing this, then he shouldn't be in the game. I said that last week.
Right.
As far as his injury, if he's not capable of being a real NFL quarterback and throwing the ball down the field, then Mason Rudolph should be in the game. Because all you're doing is getting other players on your team hurt. I don't know, but.
And we have seen that. We have seen injuries. Yes. Juju left the game. Deontay Johnson missed the game. This is not a healthy offense.
Claypool is banged up, and Najee Harris, every catch he took.
Oh, he's taking years off his career.
Yes. Yeah. So I don't know the answer. I don't know how much patience they're going to have with him. Obviously, it's an internal decision. Right. This is not going to be just a decision made by.
No.
This is an organizational decision. If you're going to pull this guy.
I'm sure.
I don't know, but I wouldn't last much longer.
Okay.
I might a couple more games, Green Bay, and I believe Denver's after that. If they start out 1-5 or 1-4, 1-5, and I don't know, but it's a tough thing to watch. And I blame I'll be honest with you. I put all this blame on Kevin Colbert and the Steeler organization. You can't bring this guy back knowing his limitations as far as mobility and then surround him by a half-ass offensive line.
I mean, it was. I mean, obviously they dealt with retirements and things like that.
But they still have $12 million in their salary cap.
Yeah.
Like if I'm them and I'm really thinking about that, if they in reality believe that they can contend for a wild card spot. I just looked at every day.
No, you're right.
There's linemen still out there.
Yeah, they need to sign somebody. And I know, for example, they're waiting for Zach Banner, but we were told week 2, we were told week 4, we're getting there. No word on him. I love the guy, but at some point here, they got to bring somebody else in. He's proven nothing. I agree. No, I hear you. He has proven nothing. The only thing he proved is he did beat out the current veteran who's healthy in camp in a fair battle. That's the only reason why you get paused.
He's no good too.
But it's a year ago, and Chuck Secor is certainly not the best. Yeah, and I think the issue also is at center. You throw a rookie out there, despite all the hype around Kendrick Green, who's not even healthy right now. We're waiting for word on him. But Ben this is the problem, and it might not have been anything they could do with it, but they do have to come into the cap space, so that's an issue. They got to bring somebody in. But this was horrible timing for Marquise Pouncey in particular, to choose to retire. Even losing David DeCastro and Alejandro Villanueva is no good anymore, but at least you want to have some veteran continuity when you're trying to stay around. If you look at the veteran quarterbacks, Brady, for example, and their offensive line, they're not necessarily the best in the world, but they're very, very good, and they're veteran groups. When you have a veteran quarterback, you want veteran offensive linemen, at least some of them in the O-line. I mean, if Chucks is your most veteran O-lineman and he's struggling, you got some problems. And Banner by years might be, but I don't know how many more of these years we're even counting in terms of his career because he's barely playing. So again, they need to do something with the offensive line. That is absolutely true. I did a show on this. Others have been talking about this. No matter what Ben does, no matter who's out there, if Tom Brady was your quarterback, it would absolutely be hard this year with this porous offensive line. With that said, and I don't think this will happen because Ben Roethlisberger is going to start probably for a while. Mike Tomlin and the Steelers and the Rooney family and Kevin Colbert, if they ever make a decision where they're not starting a healthy Ben Roethlisberger, that would be a behind closed door discussion that would probably include a debate. I don't think Tomlin would be excited about it unless Ben is playing even worse than this. I do think that would be an emotional thing. Again, it's the only quarterback that Mike Tomlin's ever had. He has won them 2 Super Bowls. He's been to 3. He's a Hall of Famer. All the stats are there. You can make an argument he's actually the greatest quarterback in Steelers history, even over Bradshaw, based on the eras. So they don't want to do it. And I also think they've learned their lesson in how awkward it was and how they had to fly across the country to kind of try to mend the fences with Troy Polamalu prior to him getting inducted. they don't want to go down that road again, certainly not with the quarterback. And if they do make a decision without discussing it with Ben, or a knee-jerk decision, Mike, you and I both know Ben and what he's heard probably from them to this point, he wouldn't be thrilled with that. They don't want to burn this relationship in what likely is his last year either. However, you have Mason Rudolph there. He has got better. He has won games before. I don't think he's the next guy by any means. I don't think that guy's on the roster. Generally speaking, it's only happened a few times in NFL history where you go from one great to another. You're usually going to have to wait a while. But the one benefit that Mason Rudolph would have, or even Dwayne Haskins would have, and you would need it in today's NFL, you would need it against Green Bay, who's scoring points, is the potential for a big play. We've seen that even recently. I don't think Ben Roethlisberger right now has the potential for a big play. He can dink and dunk you. He can shove it into these receivers and risk them getting hurt. But every big play attempt has been either overthrown, underthrown, not near these receivers. Yes, he doesn't have enough time. But if you cannot connect with at least one or two big plays per game in this NFL, you're done. You're in trouble. The Bills would have beat the Steelers if they hit a big play. They've been hitting big plays since and been winning. You got to hit one or two in those games. And if Ben is hampered, whether it be by his health or whatever, his arm strength has never returned because we haven't seen it now in a year, then maybe he threw 300 yards, but that's fool's gold because of the picks and because he threw almost 60 passes in that game. That's not going to work in terms of success with an aging quarterback, with that offensive line. 58 pass attempts is not going to work. That's not even what you'd want out of Mason or Haskins. So there's a lot going on here. I think it'll be a while. I'm tempted to believe Aditi is correct in terms of they don't want to do it and they won't do it unless Ben is that Cleveland playoff game, 4 picks, really horrendous. Then maybe they would mid-game. But I don't think that going into a week, they would want to have it be where you and I and other members of media, if they announce this on a Tuesday, all week, we're going to be talking about it. And that's going to lead to criticism of Ben. He's going to probably be blocking us on Twitter again, whoever runs that account. It's not going to – I don't think they want that. So it would be handled delicately. Maybe they wouldn't announce it until Thursday or Friday. But I think it'd be more of a mid-game thing, honestly. I don't think he'll go into a week losing the job. I think it'd have to be at halftime where he's really playing bad, but they still think they can save things. But Green Bay's going to score. They've been scoring, even though they've not been great defensively. The Steelers are going to have to score as well, and I don't see that happening here. Mic'd up here on Pittsburgh Sports Live and PSN, Mike Vukovcan and Mike Asti. So we will see. That's obviously something to keep tabs on. I also have a mic drop show that I'm comparing on who's more to blame, the Steelers offensive line or Ben, that'll drop at some point either today or tomorrow this week as well. Now, Mike, that's a topic that's just never going to die until it's decided. But what I do want to transition to, the Pittsburgh kid, Tyler Boyd, Cincinnati Bengal, a great player, I think an underrated receiver for them for years, made a comment after the game that the Steelers quit. And he feels that they showed their true colors, no matter who's the quarterback, what's going on with the O-line, all the injuries, and they have tons of problems. They quit in the game, and he felt Tomlin called off the guns, and he heard some grumblings of this, etc. I don't know. Obviously, they're not going to admit that they quit in a game. They didn't literally do that. He might be exaggerating what he heard. I cannot imagine, obviously, a Tomlin-led team just flat out said, we're done before the game's over. Now, they were out of it mathematically for a while, and they might not have been running plays to come back. But what do you make of Tyler Boyd's comments? And is there any validity to maybe they put their foot on the brake too early and maybe did show that Tomlin in his heart of hearts said, we can't do this with Ben, but I don't want to pull the trigger and get him out of there. And those thoughts were in their mind.
I would just tell, my first thing would be, tell Tyler Boyd to relax.
Yeah.
Let's relax.
Mike Hilton's waving. He's saying this. They love that win. They're going to play again.
Oh yeah. My thought is for the Bengals, slow it down a little bit. That's 2 wins for you. You know, congratulations.
Right.
Show me what you do at the end of the season. Let's see if you make the playoffs for the first time. And to me that's a.
Yeah, they didn't quit in the game, but it was a weird comment to hear.
They physically weren't good enough. Okay,
right.
For once, the Cincinnati Bengals have a roster that was on the field Sunday
was better.
That physically was better than, and you might have been able to say that once in the last 20 years.
Yeah, and they messed it up. So we'll see what they do now.
Yeah, so the Bengals organization, players within the team, they probably taught, the first time they've got their heads kicked in by the Steelers in a while. So they're they're feeling a little bit. But Tyler, I think there was a stupid comment. There was nothing to it. They were going for it. In the last quarter, maybe in the last couple of drives when they knew, it doesn't take a genius to figure out you're not. They didn't quit. They didn't quit in the first quarter. They didn't quit right before the half when they went on an 8-minute and 29-second drive to tie it up.
They got better as the game went on. You could argue, which maybe is that old legs of Ben, like a lawnmower. You take a while to get going. I don't know.
And then the Steelers are Bengals were aided by a BS pass or roughing passer call on Ingram, but they didn't quit. If you want to say that they quit, like I said, in the last couple of drives when they realized they weren't coming back, I'll give you that. So what NFL team doesn't do that when they run the ball? It happens all the time. If the game, you're not gonna, what's he want to do? Run risk of having more players get injured. So he has 20 guys on the injured list. It was a stupid comment by Tyler Boyd. I'm glad he got his touchdown. I'd like him as a player, but for the Bengals, they just got to relax, make the playoffs, and then maybe you could start talking because now, you're still the Bengals.
Yeah, and they're going to play again, but of course, and they have their young quarterback. I do believe in Joe Burrow. They have their guy of the future. The Steelers potentially don't, unless you believe in Haskins or Rudolph. So it's great for them. This is the best situation the Bengals franchise has been in years. That's great, but it's early in a season. They're going to play again. They got to keep doing this, and even if they're a year early, Tyler Boyd got to make sure that they, seize the day, and he's playing well and underrated, and that's so cool. And I'm sure also, Mike, there was some steam in his belly with the fact that he's a Pittsburgh kid. He's been in the NFL a while and very rarely beats Pittsburgh. So he's come back to Pittsburgh and either had people pity on him or he would take the L 90% of the time. So maybe he's finally salivating into something, but you got to watch what you say because they're going to play again. And it could go right back at him. And if you don't finish the job, it doesn't matter what you do against the Steelers, who the Steelers might be last in this division. So what are you bragging about Pittsburgh if they can't beat the Browns, the Ravens, if they don't make the playoffs? Is it really a big deal if you beat Pittsburgh twice? No, it means nothing. So you got to take on. I do want to read this comment here, actually, because we are streaming live this morning. One of these is Banner has more podcast interviews than NFL snaps right now. And again, I'm a Banner guy. I know he would find that funny, but yeah, that is kind of funny. Banner, very friendly to do a lot of things out there in the community and even with fans on a lot of their stuff that they don't have to go through.
I will say this about the Bengals, though. In all seriousness, if they keep things together and they're able to build on that defense with that line, with that offense, that's a serious offense. That Jamar Chase was the piece. He was what AJ Green. I'm not comparing the AJ Green yet, but he's the AJ Green of his youth, and you put him with, and they didn't even have to go against Higgins, who sat out with the shoulder. Then you got Boyd as your third receiver, whatever you want in the slot.
Yeah, they could be better too with health.
Yeah, that's a serious, that's a Cleveland Brown type offense as far as weapons. So they do have potential. There's no doubt about that. But now we're going to find out how Zach Taylor and their front office are they going to be able to keep guys, or they going to be able to build up that defense, because that's the key. If they've built up the defense, that's going to be a scary team, and they could be that could give problems to the Steelers for a lot of years. And then Tyler Boyd potentially could really celebrate every year.
I mean, he's still young to be a part of it. And again, I feel like they have their quarterback. The Steelers don't, of the future. They have a lot of pieces there. The Bengals are building something. Maybe they'll make the playoffs this year. If not this year, I would say at minimum, they got to make it next year. So they got some pressure, but they're building it the right way. They're finally doing it. This might be the best Bengals team we've seen in a while, for sure, in terms of built properly. Maybe they could actually do something in the postseason. And I do think also on the defensive side of the ball, they need to work on the secondary, but they have a great defensive line. Ben even alluded to this. They put money there in that D line, so that they're building it the right way in the trenches. They have some weaponry there as well. They're in a good situation. They got to keep it moving, but also don't forget, Mike, they beat the Steelers. Maybe they were too up for the game. They let down a stinker the week earlier where all of these pieces we're talking about didn't look that great, even though I believe in them. They can't let too many of those happen either. So they're still getting into the old Bengal way every now and then. And we'll see what they do here moving forward. And they didn't win a championship yet here. So if they're celebrating this and then they go ahead and lose next week, it's going to be rough for them. What I do want to transition here is from pros to college football. And we could talk Steelers all day with all the drama that'll end up happening. But number one with the Pitt Panthers, we touched on this in the post-game show, 77 points. Highest point totals in 1926. It's insane out there, but it certainly was against a lower level team in New Hampshire. Going into ACC play, going into more legitimate opponents, even though Georgia Tech and maybe even Virginia Tech, who's not ranked right now, are not as great as it could be. But then the schedule will get really brutal with Clemson, who's vulnerable after a loss, but Miami, etc. It'll get harder. What is the state of Pitt football right now after that game, which followed a really bad loss? Any more confidence around Pitt? And again, there are still question marks there. Narduzzi did speak after the game and kind of wanted to focus in on what's happening now and week to week, as coaches say. But how important and how much of a test is that Georgia Tech game? Obviously, they got to not only win. I'm imagining you need to see an impressive outing. Or just get the dub. Just get the dub.
Just need to win.
Yeah, it's easier said than done.
Georgia Tech's done it. We said right after the game, the Georgia Tech wasn't playing until 7:30, so we weren't sure what the outcome was. But
sure,
they've stacked 2 wins in a row now. Georgia Tech, they beat Clemson and then they beat North Carolina.
Well, they almost beat Clemson. They didn't beat Clemson. Sorry, they were very, very close. They lost 14-8, very close against Clemson.
And then they beat North
Clemson.
Carolina
they should have got the upset over Clemson. Clemson ended up losing to North Carolina State in overtime. Yeah.
All right. So that's 2 impressive opponents, 2 impressive games for Georgia Tech. It's all behind their quarterback. So it's on the road. This is a game I'm not looking for what the score is.
Get out of there. They don't play entertaining games with high score. I can't imagine that Georgia Tech defense is allowing 30 points.
Yeah, Pitt's favored by 3 or 4 points.
Right.
It's going to be about their defense, secondary containing the quarterback Sims. Pitt's going to put up, 28, 35. They're going to put up somewhere between.
You think so?
Yeah,
they could. I'm just asking.
Yeah, every game. Yeah.
Okay, that's a great offense. I'm just asking. That would be the most points allowed by Georgia Tech this year. Yes. The only reason why I say that is they did allow only 22 to North Carolina, who would be the quarterback counterpart of the conference, and they allowed 14 to Clemson, who obviously is Clemson. But yeah, Pitt. I'm a Kenny Pickett guy. He's maybe the best quarterback in the conference.
They'll put up points. It's a matter can they stop them? That's what it's going to come down to. If their defense.
Yeah.
Their defense allows in the 20s. Pitt's going to win the game. I have no doubts about this offense anymore. It's just
we'll
find out. I think they'll be up for it. Narduzzi, and rightly so, is selling them on. He's probably selling them on the openness of the Coastal
Conference,
and all their goals, despite what happened. He's probably not referencing the name Western Michigan anymore.
No, throw it out.
Everything. All their goals are still ahead of them, and that's what that has to be the theme. That has to be the talk within the building over there. And it's technically it's true. It all
the Western Michigan loss. Yeah,
and he's probably shown the standing. It's wide open. It's never been. Right. It's never been as wide open as it is this year. As far as the conference, North Carolina already has 2 losses.
Yeah.
So Pitt handles their own destiny. All the teams that they need to beat are on their schedule. Some of them have losses already. So Pitt's in a good spot. If they can start out, if they can get a quick start and be able to build a little, maybe build a little buffer in their schedule a little bit to stand a loss. So we'll see.
Yeah, and the loss eventually will come again, obviously. Yeah. It's not going to be an easy schedule here moving forward for Pitt with the gauntlet coming up. And Clemson's not who they were, but they're still Clemson. They're still having tons of talent on that roster, and they're going to be very hungry after now having lost. But not only is it open in the Coastal, you could argue the ACC is more wide open than it's been in probably 5 years because Clemson's a little weaker. You do Miami's maybe fool's gold again. Virginia Tech's already been upset. They're not ranked any longer. The door is open. unfortunately for Pitt, and I'm sure Pitt fans are rolling their eyes with this, if they didn't have the Western Michigan loss, they'd be a ranked team right now and in the complete driver's seat of, at minimum, a New Year's Six bowl game if they keep this up. But as you did say, technically that's still the case because they didn't lose yet in conference play if they go ahead and win the Coastal. And we've also said this, and it's very, very true in today's college football. If their defense gives them enough, which it didn't do against Western Michigan, they can almost beat anybody on this schedule because if you score that many points, you could even beat Clemson. I'm not picking it, but this is the best offense Pitt will have against Clemson. So if they win the division and face Clemson, who's a little weaker this year, and they score 30, I haven't seen Clemson score that many this year yet. So we'll see. Pitt's defense might be easier with what they had dealt with, but the pressure's on the defense. The pressure's on Narduzzi to not let any more upsets happen. He's a defensive guy. Whatever you got to do, you can't let the defense ruin this year or ruin another game for Kenny Pickett because that already has happened to this point. Now, before we close up shop, I do want to touch on the Mountaineers. They came off the game of the week. They came off the nightcap in the primetime 3-point loss to Oklahoma. And everything that's been going on with conference realignment and Oklahoma almost single-handedly kind of putting the program in flux for WVU and whether they're staying in the Big 12 or going to the ACC, et cetera. That was the one that maybe would get away during this era when it closes. They haven't yet beat Oklahoma since they joined the Big 12. They had the 1-point loss with Devon Austin scoring 6 touchdowns and 500-plus yards, and they still lost. Talk about defense letting someone down. And then, of course, the defense really shows up, the defense flying, and the offense didn't really get going enough to beat Oklahoma, who put up their D-plus effort, really. But does it maybe show the Mountaineers are better than some would thought, or does that show Oklahoma's not that great? What can West Virginia do? Because if West Virginia would have had that Maryland victory, a win over Tech, the big points they put up over LIU, and then a real close loss to number 4 team in the country, WVU might be ranked right now. But obviously that's not the reality, and 13 points is 13 points. They need more on offense.
Well, my take would be, depending on who I'm talking to, if I'm Neil Brown, I'm really excited as far as going into a place that's very difficult to win, going into one of college football's premier programs and taking it into the fourth quarter. That's what I'm saying that they're an established program already. They have everything. We're still making the climb. We're still building, and we, we gave them everything they wanted. That's what I'm selling them. I'm not, celebrating a loss, but I'm celebrating competitiveness and what they showed that they're building.
Yeah, nobody predicted that, right?
No, as far as nationally, I've seen Oklahoma a couple of times now this year against Texas, and now here, or Nebraska. I'm not. I think Oklahoma is completely overrated.
They almost lost to Tulane, for crying out loud.
Yeah, if you want to talk about overrated, talk about the quarterback.
Rattler.
I wrote about it in the column this week. Got a lot of attention. Who I said that talked about Kenny Pickett. You give me Kenny Pickett over Spencer Rattler, like that. They were singing that guy's praises from the day he walked on campus because he's a 5-star recruit. Sure. He showed me nothing, and really did the Oklahoma team. Didn't really show me anything.
No.
If they're one
of the fans booed him. The fans are booing him.
If they're one of the top 5 teams in the country, then it's going to be a cakewalk for Georgia and Alabama to win the championship. There's no way in the world that they could be one of the top 5 teams in the country.
I don't think so either. Obviously, though, if they go undefeated out of a major conference, they're going to get there. They moved to 6, I believe.
Smoked. Yeah,
but they're going to get smoked. But if they go undefeated, you'd have to bump them in because they'd have a few ranked wins. But they're not looking good by any means. I think the easier thing that will happen, Mike, they're going to get tripped up and lose. They're going to lose playing like this. They're not going to go undefeated with that team.
Well, the disappointing thing, I'll tell you what what West Virginia reminded me of. Honestly, they reminded me of Pitt a few years ago as far as their offense.
Yeah,
it's just so everything is so conservative. Daggy is
there. You go. Conservative is the word.
Just so conservative. There's nothing. Yeah. He throws it up almost like Ben now. He throws the deep passes, just throwing it down the field, hoping that somebody catches it.
Yeah, he's not in sync on the deep ball at all. No.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because I think they have a pretty good defense. The quarterback, I think, is just holding them back.
Yeah, we could do a whole nother show on when you pull the trigger on Daggy. And I know that Brown and him have known each other. Every game you hear this, Mike. Neil Brown and new Seth Daggy, and then Jared Daggy with 8th grade. And okay. Yeah. But the only issue is that Garrett Green, we don't know yet if he can throw it. What I want to see, because we've seen him sprinkled in, I need to see Garrett Green with a couple real passes, not dumper. Here's a 5-yarder. Let him see what you have. But they're not going to start him because it's a risk, but you don't know if he can throw enough. He's basically been a pure runner for them. But I do think Daggy's holding it back in a way.
Yeah, that's my take. Is that I think they have some skill at receivers. I think next year they get some more players in. This is just going to be a process, and West Virginia fans are just going to have to trust Neil Brown that he's bringing in the right talent. And unfortunately, I don't want to rip on a college kid, but they're going to need Jared Daggy to graduate or whatever, and bring in a new quarterback to get this thing going. This kid that they got from West Arizona, 4-star guy, looks to be really good. We'll see what I don't know that Brown's going to start a true freshman, but he's the future, obviously.
No, Garrett Green will start next year, I'd imagine.
Yeah, so and if that's the case, then if things don't improve a little, it probably would do West Virginia some good to get Green some real experience instead of throwing him in next year without really, as you say, throwing real passes and really running the offense.
Well, they play Texas Tech, who is not a good team. Let's face it, they're not good. If West Virginia does not beat Texas Tech, then I'm doing what you're saying, and I'm saying year's over, Green's in. If he can turn it around and get a bowl game, fantastic. If not, we wouldn't be getting in anyway. So you got to beat Texas Tech. That you got to. It's a must-win game early in the year for West Virginia. I don't care what the score is. It's like what you said with Pitt. They got to get out of there with a W. Yeah. I don't care what's going on. So if they don't, then I would pull the trigger, and it would be very poetic that it keeps happening these games against Texas Tech, which is where his brother played. But yeah, I do think Daggy is holding him back a little bit. You need to see more from Green. The reason why Green couldn't start this year, or he couldn't start yet, you don't know if he can throw the ball. And this isn't Rich Rodriguez's West Virginia. You don't have the spread in there to do Pat White stuff. Neil Brown's not that guy. I will say I think he's still the right coach in there. You got to stack more wins. Finally has a big one. This probably was a process. People got too excited by them winning 7 last year and winning a bowl game. That might have been a year ahead of schedule. And somebody did say this, and I do believe it without any proof to be able to say it. Dana Holgerson-led West Virginia team would have got blown out by Oklahoma. They're playing for Neil Brown, even though I don't think they're ready yet. And, Mike, if I would have told you before the year, I'll leave you with this, that West Virginia would even be in these games and would beat a quality team with Letty Brown having almost no stats at all through 4 weeks, I would have said they could have been 0-4 or would have got blown out to Virginia Tech and Oklahoma. So they got to get him going. If they can get, Letty Brown has been nothing in any of these games. He's hurting his draft stock even, and it might be the O-line's fault, like with Najee Harris, but you got to get him going. He's the best player on the entire field, even with the opponents in some cases, and he is doing nothing in these games. If you can get him going, that makes it easier on everyone else. But we will see big games here coming up early in the season. We already see some playoff predictions and any of that, and maybe the chance for our network to have a playoff team actually is Penn State over there at Nittany Sports Now. They're sliding in with Oklahoma being a little overrated and Clemson losing, so we'll see if they can keep that up as well. But some of their wins over Wisconsin and Auburn, they don't look as great as they did when they were played. So they got to keep on doing it. And, of course, they got to beat Ohio State. But follow all the college sites as well, of course, of Steelers Now. That'll do it for this edition of the show. A lot of drama, a lot of conversation, a lot going into still another week